You ever sit around with a group of guys and someone drops that question, when do women want it the most? And suddenly everyone's got an opinion. The young ones say 20-somethings. The married guys roll their eyes. The divorced ones just laugh. The kind of laugh that says, you'll see. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. Most men have no idea when women actually come alive. They think it's about age, looks, or fitness. They think desire fades with wrinkles, that lust has an expiration date stamped somewhere around 35. That's the biggest lie we've ever been sold. I didn't believe it either until it hit me in the most unexpected way. I was 34, newly divorced, sitting in a quiet bar with a beer that had gone flat hours ago, wondering when my life turned gray. And then she walked in, older, confident, not trying to look 20, not trying to be anything she wasn't. She smiled like she'd seen every version of love and still had appetite left. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. That night, something shifted. I realized how wrong I'd been about women, about age, about desire itself. Because she didn't flirt like the women I'd known in my 20s. There was no hesitation, no performance. She wasn't chasing validation. She was validation, walking, breathing, effortless. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Young women are learning desire. Older women are living it. The 25-year-old worries about angles, about lighting, about what you'll think if she moves too fast or too slow. She's not inside the moment. She's watching herself from the outside, narrating the scene in her head like she's in some cheap romantic drama. But the 45-year-old? She's inside her body. She's not asking what you want. She already knows what she wants, and she's not shy about taking it. Her movements aren't rehearsed. They're instinctive. She's not performing pleasure. She's chasing it like oxygen. You see, it's not about the body, it's about the mind finally getting out of the way. Somewhere around 40, women stop living for approval. They stop apologizing for wanting. And when that happens, the real fire starts. I remember lying next to a woman who was 43, the kind of woman society pretends doesn't exist. She laughed afterward, a deep, satisfied laugh, and said something I'll never forget. If someone had told me at 25 that I'd be having the best sex of my life at 43, I'd have called them insane. I didn't even know my body could feel like this. That hit me harder than any philosophy book ever could. Because it wasn't about lust. It was about freedom. About finally being comfortable enough to stop pretending, to stop performing, to stop worrying about being too much. We're taught to worship youth like it's the peak of everything. But youth is just the rehearsal. Real passion doesn't show up until the fear of judgment dies. And that death doesn't happen at 25. It happens when life has already taught you that beauty fades, people leave, and time doesn't wait, so you might as well feel everything while you can. Older women aren't trying to impress you. They're inviting you to keep up. They've carried children, buried dreams, rebuilt lives, and now they want to feel alive. It's raw. It's unfiltered. It's real. And once you've experienced that kind of woman, the kind who doesn't ask for permission to exist, who knows her worth not by how many men desire her but by how deeply she desires herself, you'll never look at youth the same way again. Because youth looks good, but experience feels good. Let me tell you what happens when the performance ends, when the mascara fades, when the approval game dies, when the mirror stops being a judge and starts being a witness. That's when a woman becomes dangerous in the best possible way. You see, young women are taught to act sexy. Older women have lived long enough to know what actually is sexy. Confidence, honesty, presence. When she looks at you, she's not wondering if you like her outfit or her body. She's wondering if you can handle what she's about to do to your soul. Because when a woman crosses that invisible line, somewhere between 38 and 50, she doesn't just want sex. She wants depth. Connection, rawness. She wants to feel alive in every nerve of her body because, for the first time in her life, she finally can. I remember this one night, I was with a woman who was 47. 2 kids in college, a life behind her that would have exhausted anyone else. But her energy, it was volcanic. She didn't just want pleasure. She wanted to burn away everything false. Every polite smile, every fake moan. Every moment she'd ever pretended to be satisfied just to keep the peace. She said something I'll never forget. You spend your 20s trying to be the fantasy. You spend your 30s trying to hold your life together. But your 40s, that's when you finally start living for yourself. And that hit me like a confession wrapped in truth. Because she wasn't chasing approval anymore. She wasn't doing anything for him. She was doing it because she wanted to. Because for the first time in decades, she wasn't scared of being called selfish for it. Here's the paradox most men never understand. When a woman finally stops trying to please everyone, she becomes irresistible. Not because she's trying harder, but because she's finally real. She doesn't fake enthusiasm to make you feel manly. She doesn't nod politely when you do something that doesn't work. She tells you what she wants, directly, calmly, confidently. And that honesty, that's sexier than any lingerie or movie fantasy you've ever had. Because here's what the movies never show. Real attraction isn't polite. It's primal. It's the moment when two people drop the scripts they've been performing for years and finally meet as they are. Scarred, experienced, unapologetic. Younger women are often still figuring out who they are. They confuse being desired with being loved, and being loved with being safe. Older women have already lost safety a few times. Through heartbreak, through disappointment, through time itself, and what remains is truth. They've learned that desire isn't something you ask for. It's something you create. Through confidence, curiosity, and presence. And when they choose you, it's not out of insecurity. It's not because you're the best they can get. It's because they want you, specifically you. That kind of choice hits different. But here's what terrifies most men. Older women can't be manipulated with flattery. You can't charm them with surface-level confidence. They've seen it all before, the arrogance, the ego, the performance of masculinity that hides deep insecurity. They don't want your approval. They want your authenticity. They want the man who's done pretending too, who can sit in silence without needing validation, who can make love without turning it into a scoreboard. And that's why so many men run back to younger women. Not because they're sexier, but because they're easier. Easier to impress, easier to control, easier to fool. But if you ever have the courage to stay, to really face an older woman who knows who she is, she'll show you what intimacy actually feels like. It's not wild every night. It's not about proving anything. It's about dissolving the walls, about sharing space with someone who knows how fragile and precious real connection is. And once you experience that, all the fake intensity, all the scripted passion, all the performances of youth, they just feel empty. Because youth might give you excitement, but experience gives you meaning. And when you've tasted meaning, when you've seen what it's like to be wanted for your presence, not your potential, you realize that the sexiest thing about a woman has never been her age. It's her self-awareness, her freedom, her refusal to pretend anymore. There's a moment in a woman's life, usually somewhere between 40 and 50, when something fundamental changes. It's not about looks or hormones or what the magazines call aging gracefully. No, it's something deeper, quieter, far more dangerous. She wakes up one morning and realizes she doesn't owe anyone anything anymore. That's the day she stops apologizing for her desires. Stops explaining why she's not who she used to be. Stops performing the role of the good wife, the good mother, the good girl. That's the day she becomes free. And that freedom, it radiates. It's magnetic. It's the kind of energy that fills a room before she even opens her mouth. Because you can feel it, that mix of calm power and unapologetic want. The kind that says, I've spent years pleasing everyone else. Now it's my turn. See, younger women often confuse beauty with desirability. They think attraction is about youth, smooth skin, perfect hair, the right dress. But older women have lived long enough to know that desire isn't about how you look. It's about how you make someone feel. You can be 25 and flawless, but if your energy screams insecurity, people feel it. You can be 45 with laugh lines, stretch marks, and silver in your hair. But if you walk with certainty, with that grounded sensuality that comes from knowing who you are, you'll turn heads in every room you enter. Because confidence isn't something you fake. It's something you earn through pain, through loss, through learning that approval isn't oxygen. I once asked a woman in her late 40s what changed for her, why she suddenly felt more alive, more open, more in touch with her sexuality than she ever had in her 20s. She smiled and said, "Because I stopped living in the mirror. I used to look at my reflection to see if I was enough. Now, I look to remember who I am." That's when it hit me. The sexiest part of an older woman isn't her body. It's her presence. That quiet, unshakable knowing that she doesn't have to compete with anyone. That her worth doesn't fluctuate based on who notices her. And when she loves, she doesn't do it for validation. She does it because she chooses to. Younger women often love with hope. Older women love with awareness. One is a gamble. The other is a gift. When an older woman desires you, it's not about chasing fantasy. It's about recognition. She sees the real you, not the version you show the world. Not the charm, not the talk. She sees your character, your calm, your silence, your strength. And that gaze, that steady, deliberate look that says, "I know exactly what I want, and I want you." It's disarming, because it's not lust without thought. It's lust with understanding. But here's the paradox. The same thing that makes her so magnetic is what intimidates most men. Because she doesn't need you. She wants you. And that's a difference most men aren't ready for. Need creates control. Want creates choice. And being chosen by someone who doesn't need you, that's real power. It's why so many men secretly fear older women. Because they can't hide behind bravado or money or charm. She's not impressed by any of it. She's been lied to, used, disappointed, adored, ignored, and she's still standing. You can't manipulate a woman who's already rebuilt herself. When she says, "I want you," she means it. But if she says, "I'm done," she means that too, and she won't come back. That's why loving an older woman is like standing in front of a storm. It's beautiful, wild, alive, but it demands presence. It demands strength. It demands honesty, because she'll give you everything. Passion, loyalty, intensity, depth, but only if you can meet her there. She's not looking for a savior. She's looking for an equal. And when you finally meet one, a woman who knows who she is, who's done apologizing for existing, who carries both softness and power in every movement, you'll understand something that youth can never teach. That real femininity isn't fragile. It's fierce. It's forgiving. It's free. And that kind of woman, she doesn't just make love to your body. She rewires your entire understanding of what love even means. Let me tell you something most people will never say out loud. Women don't lose their fire with age. They just stop wasting it on the wrong people. The older she gets, the less patience she has for shallow connections, for lazy touch, for half-hearted love. She's not chasing butterflies anymore. She wants earthquakes. She wants depth that makes her forget where she ends and you begin. Because by the time she reaches her 40s or 50s, she's lived enough life to understand that pleasure isn't a luxury. It's a form of truth. And she's done lying. She's done faking orgasms to protect fragile egos. She's done pretending affection when she's dying inside. She's done being polite when what she wants is real connection. When you touch her now, you're not touching a stranger's fantasy. You're touching history. Every heartbreak, every rebirth, every piece of her that learned to love again after being hurt. She doesn't melt for compliments. She melts for presence. For a man who's actually there, not just physically, but emotionally, energetically, spiritually. You see, an older woman's desire isn't simple lust. It's layered. It's life mixed with longing, pain mixed with peace, hunger mixed with healing. When she kisses you, she's not just saying, "I want you." She's saying, "I trust you enough to stop performing." And that kind of intimacy is terrifying, because it strips away every illusion, yours and hers. A woman in her 20s might crave excitement. A woman in her 40s craves honesty. She wants slow touches that say, "I see you," not fast ones that scream, "I need to prove something." She wants the kind of connection that feels like coming home, not conquest. And here's the truth most men never face. They say they want confident women, but what they really mean is they want women who pretend to be confident until it threatens their ego. Because real confidence in a woman doesn't flatter you. It tests you. It asks, Can you handle me without trying to control me? And that's the moment most men fail. They fall back into their comfort zones, chasing younger women who'll mirror back their strength instead of matching it. But the few who stay, the few who face that challenge head-on, they discover something that changes them forever. Because being desired by an older woman isn't just about sex. It's about awakening. You start to realize how shallow most of your past experiences were. How often you mistook attention for affection. How often you confused performance for passion. And suddenly, you're ruined for anything less. Because once you've felt what it's like to be wanted by someone who doesn't need you, someone who chooses you from strength, not from fear, you'll never go back to begging for interest. I remember the last night I spent with a woman in her late 40s. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You know why older women are sexier? Because we finally understand what men never do. That desire isn't about looking perfect. It's about being present. It's about finally feeling free enough to stop caring about how we look and start caring about how we feel." That line stuck with me, because that's the truth right there. Freedom is the ultimate aphrodisiac. When a woman is no longer shackled by insecurity, by comparison, by the pressure to prove her worth, her body becomes something sacred again. Not a performance, not a service, not an obligation. A living, breathing force of nature. And if you're lucky enough to be the man she lets in, she'll teach you what real intimacy feels like. It's not about dominance or submission. It's about mutual surrender, the kind that makes both of you forget where one ends and the other begins. So why are older women sexier than younger ones? Because they've stopped pretending. Because they've earned their confidence. Because their pleasure isn't borrowed, it's owned. And because when a woman finally understands that her desire isn't something to hide or justify, it becomes unstoppable. She's not chasing youth anymore. She is the storm that youth could never survive. And once you've stood in that storm, once you've felt the power of a woman who knows herself, you'll never again confuse youth with beauty. Because youth fades. But self-knowing? That's eternal.